Hello, everybody. My name is Nate. If we haven't met, I am so happy that you're here. And if you're watching live or another place, another time, glad you joined us as well. I just want to say a special thank you to anybody who is listening and you are not sure what you believe. And we call that being spiritually unresolved. And we hope this is a safe place for you to ask some dangerous questions as you examine the teachings of Jesus. A couple things before we jump into this series. First, I would just ask for your prayers. We have our camp season is kicking off, and just later today, my wife Jenny and I will run up to camp, and we have, I think, about 160 people coming for missions camp. And these are people that, many of them are just my heroes, and they'd be your heroes. They've given up all types of comforts, and they've moved to places where life can sometimes be hostile. And we are gathering them for 4 days. And here's my hope, is that when they leave, they're gonna be leaving on Thursday and Friday, flying to other parts of the world. And we're just praying that they leave refreshed, inspired, and they leave just with God's hand on them for the future. So if you think about that, pray for 150, 160 missionaries this week. Second, I wanted to say, just give a brief shout out. So a couple of weeks ago, we had an annual convention we're part of a family of churches called Foursquare. There's like 1,800 in the US, but there's 92,000 globally. So the US is just this tiny little segment. And once a year, the US church gets together. And this year it was in Denver, Colorado, which is closer to Billings, Montana than it will ever be. And our worship team was asked to lead the worship. And it was... I didn't think I took them for granted. Like, I really appreciate them, but they got to lead worship for 4,000 pastors. And I've been getting emails and texts all week wanting to hire them, which I refuse. And then secondly, just saying, hey, that was the highlight of the entire experience for them. So thanks so much, worship team. And you guys are amazing. It's good. So I want to start a new series today. We're going to take probably 4 weeks to look at this. It's a book in the Old Testament by the name of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah is a unique book. It's filled with Hebrew poetry, which sometimes is difficult to read as English speakers, and then narrative in between. A couple of things about the book of Jeremiah. It is the most voluminous book in the Bible in terms of words. And if you've tried to read it, you may have, well, that's a lot of words in this book. It's 52 chapters long. Hebrew people referred to Jeremiah as the weeping prophet. How many men would love to have that identifying them? And it's because Jeremiah is talking about some very difficult things, and his message is not always appreciated. He is a priest in Jerusalem. Israel and Judah have already separated. They were one nation, and after King Solomon, they separated, and Jeremiah is living in the southern kingdom. Jerusalem is the capital. The temple is there. It is the heart and soul of Jewish culture, but there are some significant problems, and you'll notice at the very beginning of the book, chapter 1, chapter 2, God comes to Jeremiah when he's a very young man. And he says, listen, Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart to be a prophet to the nations. And then there's this dual aspect to what he's called to do. He says, I'm going to ask you to plant, and I'm going to ask you to uproot. I'm going to ask you to build, and I'm going to ask you to tear down. And just to be honest, it's a terrible job description. It is not easy. And he says, Jeremiah, I am so concerned about my people. And somebody has to tell them how I feel. And so for the rest of the book, 52 chapters, Jeremiah is the mouthpiece of God to the people. And here's what that leads to. His rejection by his family, his rejection by the other priests, beatings, he's thrown into a pit, he's thrown into prison, and this is why he's known as the weeping prophet. Because here's the deal. He said yes to God. And he is obedient, and he aligns his life with God, and he experiences unbelievable amounts of pain. And part of the book of Jeremiah is Jeremiah processing this incredible discomfort with God. And here's why I'd like us to look at this book, because none of us are immune to that. If you're not sure what you believe, you know what hard times are, right? It's part of the human condition. If you're a follower of Jesus, you know what hard times are. And oftentimes, we're not exactly sure how to process this. Here's what's happening in the context of Jeremiah's time. There's three crises that keep coming back over and over throughout the book. The first is a spiritual crisis. It's this profound spiritual crisis. And what has happened is, here's Israel, and they have been surrounded for centuries by this collective group of people known as the Canaanites. And there's different tribes within the Canaanites, and they all have their own gods that they worship. The dominant ones are a female fertility goddess known as Asherah. There's a god named Dagon, who's a god of the sea. And then there's Molech. And then the foremost god is Baal, B-A-A-L. And this has just kind of been the history is, if you live on the border, you're living next to these Canaanites, and this osmosis happens. I don't think anybody intended it for it to happen, but they began to be intrigued by these other forms of worship around them, and God from the outset of the nation. In the Ten Commandments, early on, he said, I am a jealous God, and I refuse to share your heart and your affections and your worship with any other God. I alone am your God. But this pattern emerges, is they begin, theologians call this syncretism, where you take this belief and you synchronize them together to make something that's much more palatable for you. And this is happening over and over. And it's happened, this is the extent to what's happening. They are building shrines to the goddess Asherah. They're building these shrines on high places, anything that's elevated, a mountain or a hill. They build a place where you worship the god Baal. They're setting up statues of the god Molech. And God says, this is not okay. I know it normalizes you. I know that your neighbors are much more comfortable with you now that you're worshiping these gods along with me, but I cannot tolerate this. And God brings up this theme throughout the book of Jeremiah that he says, I am like the one who's been faithful in the relationship, and you are like the partner in the marriage who is committing an act of adultery. You're violating this sacred relationship that we have. And it has gone to this extent that there are Jewish people who go to the temple, they're worshiping God, and they are also adopting the practice of infant sacrifice to the god Molech. And God says this is intolerable. So there's a spiritual crisis. Second crisis is a leadership crisis. Throughout the book, God will over and over address this theme. He says, your leaders are corrupt. He uses the word corrupt. And he starts with your spiritual leaders. The priests are corrupt. Their hearts are wavering and heading in other directions. Your governmental leaders are corrupt. Your civic leaders are corrupt. And here's what they're doing. Instead of using their God-given roles to serve the people, they are instead seeing the people as commodities, and they are taking and they're profiting, and they are asking people to serve them rather than them serve the people. So there's this leadership crisis. And then here's the third crisis. It's injustice. So because of the spiritual crisis, because of the leadership crisis, God comes back to over and over this theme of injustice, and he says, the people who are most vulnerable, and he names them off, the widow, the orphan, and the foreigner. Foreigner was anybody who was unable to own land. In an agrarian society, that pretty much, you're stuck in a world of poverty, a cycle of poverty. He says, the orphan, the widow, and the foreigner are being treated unjustly. The leaders are using them, are treating them in a way that is so completely opposite to what I have commanded. And it's a catastrophe. And so God asks Jeremiah to stand up and to speak to all three of these things: the spiritual compromise, the leadership crisis, and the injustice in the land. And nobody wants to hear it, especially the people in power. They're like, no, life's fine. We don't want to hear that. And then you come to chapter 12, verse 5, where God asks this question. He says, Jeremiah, if you are tired trying to run a foot race with men, how in the world are you ever going to run with horses? We'll explore that more in a bit. So here's my heart behind this is life can be difficult, and I know in my own heart and then many people that I interact with, we do not know what to do with pain and suffering. We don't know what to do with experiences that we never anticipated or planned for. And we have this thinking in our mind, it's like a magical Christian thinking where we think, hey, I'm doing the right thing, therefore nothing bad should ever happen to me. And God addresses that and walks with Jeremiah throughout this book. Here's an illustration. Here's why this is important. I'm going to protect this person's identity, but there's a woman who's a part of this church. And over the last 12 plus months, her life, catastrophic proportions of pain. Betrayal, secrets revealed, and then the death of her husband. And it's just like one of those things that if it happened to any of us, like the level of pain, no one would ever blame her if it was like, oh, she broke under the weight of that. And we were dialoguing back and forth recently in an email, and she wrote this. She said, I realize I can't escape these waves of adversity. Meaning this, I can't control what happens to me. I'm not in control of what other people do. I can't control that. But I have come to believe that drowning is optional. And I wrote her back and I said, can I use this phrase right here? Because what a faith-filled phrase that in the middle of all this chaos and pain, I've come to realize that drowning is not optional. This does not have to destroy my life. There is a way through this, not denying the pain, but saying, I don't have to drown in the midst of this. There's a way through. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like us to look at the life of Jeremiah. We're going to read the majority of chapter 12, and I have 3 thoughts on how to endure the difficult times from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 1. Jeremiah, he often brings his pain to God. By the way, it's a great place to bring your pain, okay? Better than bringing it to your dog or your friend or your spouse or your child. You are always righteous, Lord, when I bring a case before you, okay? Yet, I would speak with you about your justice. Anybody ever prayed that prayer? Lord, I sure love you, but I've got an issue. Like, we need to talk, okay? Because something is not going well and I don't understand. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? These are peppered throughout the Psalms. Asaph, David. Lord, I don't get it. I am doing life the right way. And I watch people who have no regard for you whatsoever, and they seem to flourish. Why do all the faithless live at ease? Why do people who have no faith in you, their lives just seem so easy? You have planted them, and they have taken root. They grow and bear fruit. You are always on their lips, but far from their hearts. So he says, here's my problem, is I am watching people who are hypocritical. They talk as if they know you, but I know that they don't trust you. There's nothing in their hearts. And I'm watching them be planted, take root, flourish, and become fruitful. That's not fair. This is like the ancient question. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is there still pain in my life? Now, Jeremiah is going to continue in this vein. He says this, yet you know me, Lord. You see me and test my thoughts about you. So here's a really important point. When you're feeling overwhelmed and why is this happening and why is it happening to me? Jeremiah realizes there could be a problem with my perceptions. There could be a problem with how I'm seeing this. And so he says, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you my thoughts because I can't see truth. All I'm doing is I'm feeling the ramifications of what is happening in my life. And then he attaches, this is about his thoughts, drag them, my perceptions, my thinking, off like sheep to be butchered. Lord, I know if I keep thinking this way, if I keep asking that question, why, I'll never make an advancement. I'll just be overwhelmed by the pain. So I'm asking you, would you take my perceptions, my thoughts, the way I'm experiencing this, and I'm not denying it, I'm fully embracing it, I'm telling you, but then I need you to take everything I'm thinking and feeling, and I need you to test it. I need you to drag those thoughts, that way of viewing the world off like sheep to be butchered. Set them apart for the day of slaughter. How long will the land lie parched and the grass in every field be withered? Because those who live in it are wicked, the animals and the birds have even perished. Moreover, the people are saying, he will not see what happens to us. It's that classic perspective. If he is real, if there is really a God, how could this happen? If there's really a God, there's no way that he could actually be good because of what we're experiencing. Now, in verse 5, God answers him. We read this. If you have raced with men on foot, Jeremiah, and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses? Let me explore this. So it's kind of a funny phrase, and this is where the series comes from. This is chapter 12. There's 52 chapters in this book. God is saying this, Jeremiah, I hear your complaints, and I know it's not fair, and I know you're in pain, but here's my question for you, Jeremiah. If you're already willing to give up, how are you going to handle it when it gets worse? Wouldn't it be nice if God said, oh, Jeremiah, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure that the future is better. I'll make sure that I take away your pain. But instead, God stands up as a challenger and says to Jeremiah, listen, if you think it's tough now, here's my question. How are you going to run with horses when it gets faster? So human beings, fastest human being we have on record, Usain Bolt. He clocked 27.78 miles per hour, slightly faster than you and I can run, okay? An untrained horse can run about 44, 45 miles per hour. A trained horse, over 50 miles per hour. And so God's saying this, Jeremiah, listen, I know it's hard and I understand your pain, but like life isn't guaranteed to get easier. So if you aren't winning now, how are you going to win when it really gets going? And then he asks the second question. If you stumble in safe country, Jeremiah, what you're experiencing now is relatively benign. How will you manage in the thickets of the Jordan? Your relatives, members of your own family, even they have betrayed you. Oh, thank you for reminding me of that, God. I appreciate. Some of you know this. Like, they have raised a loud cry against you. Do not trust them, though they speak well of you. I will forsake my house, abandon my inheritance. I will give the one I love into the hands of their enemies. So what is God, can we go back? What God is saying here is this. God has already told Nehemiah information that nobody else has. That because of all that's happening, there is going to come from the north an invasion. And it's an invasion of the Babylonian kingdom, the juggernaut of power in Jeremiah's day. And they're going to come in, and what God is referring to here is they are literally going to come in and they're going to destroy the temple, the sacred epicenter of the entire Jewish system. The temple is going to be destroyed. He says, they're going to take my inheritance, and the one I love is going to go into the hands of another enemy. Like, this is happening. And he tells Jeremiah, by the way, they're going to be in exile for 70 years. A couple of generations of people won't even know what life was like here. My inheritance has become to me like a lion in the forest. God's saying this, my people, now they're hostile towards me. Instead of walking in harmony, there's this hostility towards me as their God, and something is going to have to change. All right, here's 3 thoughts on how I can learn to run with horses. This is my heart for myself, for my family, and for each and every one of you, that whatever life throws at you, that you'll be able to run with horses. That we won't be buried, we won't be overwhelmed. We'll experience that. It's not that we're living in denial, but we find a way to thrive in the midst of pain. And that begins with this. Number 1, we have to acknowledge reality. It won't always be easy. I feel like I oftentimes need to make an apology to followers of Jesus because somehow, some way, when they were presented the message of Jesus, there are all these like amazing, beautiful things that your sins are taken away and separated from you as far as the east is from the west, that you're given a new title, a new reality. You become a son and a daughter of God, like all things begin new. But somehow, specifically in the Western form of U.S. Christianity, we have also inferred this, that if you give your life to Jesus, we can selectively pick all the verses that we really like out of the Bible and apply them specifically to our lives and negate or ignore all the other stuff. And that when you were told, perhaps, hey, are you ready to give your life to Jesus? And you had this feeling that there would be a unicorn that would fly down and you would hop on his back and it would fly you through a rainbow into a new Mercedes Benz, right? It's like, my life is gonna be blessed and beautiful. And I can't tell you how often I encounter American followers of Jesus who are just like, man, I signed up for blessing. That's what I'm here for. And what in the world is going on? Read the scriptures. Look at Paul. Look at Jeremiah. Look at the Old Testament saints. Look at the first apostles. Like nobody expected life to be easy. They expected to follow and to submit their lives to Jesus, and what happened to them would not determine where they would go in the future. They were just, I'm following him. Last night after the evening service, right outside these doors, there's a young lady, she's a guest, she's a brand new mom. And she'd gone to college here in town, and they've moved away to Colorado. And she was waiting to talk with me, and we talked for a moment, and like you could just tell she had tears in her eyes. And she told me this. She said, 9 months ago, we had our first baby. And over the first 9 months of his life, he's had 3 open heart surgeries, and there are more to come. And she just didn't expect that. Nobody expects that. And then she said, but I still trust God. And I love him. And every time my son takes a step or smiles or laughs, my heart is overwhelmed. And I looked at her and I said, you are learning how to run with horses. Because all this happened and you didn't anticipate this, and we all expect that life will be great and marriage and relationships and a career is gonna flourish. And when it doesn't, what do? You have to change your perceptions. And you have to say, God, I don't always understand what happens to me, but here's what I do know. I know that you will never leave me and you will never forsake me. And I know that my name is written in your book of life. And I know that my sins have been forgiven. And I know that I am a daughter or a son of God. And that is what matters. And all these other things, as much as they hurt, they are peripheral. They are not the essence of what it means to follow you. I still live in a broken world with broken people. And I myself am broken. So I have to acknowledge reality. It will not always be easy. In John chapter 15, verse 18, Jesus is he's having his final discussions with his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane before he's going to be arrested and then go to the cross. In chapter 15, he says this: if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. So one of Jesus' final words is this: hey, I can't guarantee that it's going to be easy, because guess what? I fully submitted my life to the Father. I obeyed him. I followed him in everything. And there are people that hate me. And by the way, they're going to arrest me, they're going to beat me, and they're going to execute me. And so as my followers, you are going to have to adjust your expectation that everything is always going to be rosy. You're going to have to find a way to thrive in the midst of pain. If they hate Jesus, there's going to be pain for you as well. Jesus adjusts their expectation. So first, acknowledge reality. It won't always be easy. Number two is this: instead of chasing comfort, embrace the challenge. Okay, instead of chasing comfort, embrace the challenge. I think most of us are aware of this, but we probably live, I think you could make a really good case for this, in the most comfortable environment and culture that humans have ever experienced. We have medical help that human history did not help. You know, back in the old days, like if you weren't feeling well, they cut you open and bled you, okay? Or attached leeches onto you. This is how we'll make you better. We have aspirins and medications, and like we can make the pursuit of comfort our highest ordeal. Like this is the number one thing in my life is to be comfortable, and I understand that, because if you don't like to be comfortable, that's weird, right? Like we have a name for it. If you like, give me more pain, right? No, that's not good. That's not good. But we just want comfort, and yet I'm surprised. I had a day this week where I had some unanticipated things happen, and it was like 2 p.m, and I hadn't eaten lunch, and I was sitting at my desk, and I'm like, I think I'm on the verge of death. I am so hungry, like I feel weak right now. And it just made me laugh because I'm thinking about this. I'm like, I've never even known hunger. I grew up on some government cheese, but I was still fed, right? Like we don't even get it. So we can chase comfort and instead embrace the challenge. I've got the incredible pleasure of having a 3-year-old grandson living with me right now. And this boy, he's like all boy and outside and adventures. And every night, I put him to bed last night, and we had to go over all of his owies that he experienced during the day. He doesn't really complain about them during the day, but man, we bought the Costco mega pack of Band-Aids, and we're almost through them. Like, you go through 10 Band-Aids a night, because before he goes to bed, he needs comfort. And so he goes through his whole body, and he's like, I need a Band-Aid here and one here and here. And last night, like 8 Band-Aids later, I'm like, you okay now? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. And he goes to bed. And then he gets up the next morning and he re-injures himself. And that's how it should be, right? We often think of God as primarily all about our comfort. And yes, in the Bible, you will see 2 things: that God is both a comforter, but please hear this, and a challenger. A comforter and a challenger. And when we experience wounds, somebody betrayed us, somebody hurt us, somebody ripped us off, we're like, God, I have so many boo-boos right now. I just need you to kiss them and tell me it's gonna be okay and make them all better, and I'm not getting out of bed tomorrow because I need these to heal up. No, I think you gotta be like my grandson. Like, get up, God comforted you, and now go play. Go live your life. I had a high school wrestling coach. It was just one of the most phenomenal human beings I've ever met. He was kind, and he was both a comforter and a challenger. And it was my senior year, I was in a match, and some just bizarre thing happened, and I can't do it with my left arm because it still doesn't work. I had my arm dislocated behind my head, so my shoulder was out of socket, and the ref saw it and stopped the match, And I stood up, and my coach ran over, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I can't move my arm. It's stuck." And he looked at me, and he goes, "Do you want to keep wrestling?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he immediately jumps in the air, puts his knee in my ribs, grabs my shoulder, whack, like the whole gym hears it. It snaps back into place. And I'm like, okay. And he just punches me in the chest, and he goes, "You'll be fine." What if my coach was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, let's get some tape," right? Like, "You're okay?" I needed a challenger at that point in my life. You need a comforter, and Jesus is the one who brings comfort, but he will also say, "And let me challenge you. Your life is not over. There's more happening than you can see. That hurt, tell me about it, and then let's get up tomorrow morning and keep going." There is a world in need. There are gifts and assignments within your life. Don't chase comfort. You can choose comfort, or you can choose growth, but you cannot have both. Over and over in the New Testament, you read things like this. "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when trials and challenges of every type come into your life." Because here's what happens. When you are challenged, you are transformed. And you only grow when you're experiencing challenge. It happens with your physical body, right? Has anybody grown a six-pack watching football and drinking beer? It doesn't happen, right? Your body responds to resistance. Your spirit responds to resistance. I can either say, "I need more comfort," or I can say, "God, I don't know what's there, but I believe that you're with me, and I'm going to keep going and let that development grow in my life." Number 3, stop focusing on what's wrong and start focusing on what is right. So Jeremiah had all this intel that nobody else had. And he knows the temple's going to be destroyed. He knows that Babylon is coming. He knows that his family has rejected him. We haven't even got into his imprisonments and his beatings and his being thrown in a pit. And he's just looking down like this, right? And how many of us can do that? Like, my life is painful, and all I can see are the people that betrayed me. All I can feel is the pain that I'm experiencing. And throughout this book, and we read it in chapter 12, here's what God's gonna do. "Jeremiah, I need you to focus not just on what's wrong, but I want you to start focusing on what is right. I want you to think about what I can do. I want you to think about the big picture. Because if I get lost in my pain, I don't know how to move forward. I'm paralyzed by it." This week, if you get a chance, read from the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. It's in the New Testament towards the very end. And it's like the title above will say, "The Hall of Faith." Okay, so instead of Hall of Fame, a Hall of Faith. And the writer of Hebrews walks through Jeremiah, his contemporaries, other people, and he walks through the lives of all these Old Testament characters. And here's what they all had in common. They experienced catastrophe. They experienced waiting, and they experienced pain. And the author says, these are the people that we look up to. And you or I are like, no. Put in like the people who were wealthy and powerful. Like, that's our hall of faith. And the writer of Hebrews says, oh no, these people, it goes this far. It says, some of them were drawn and quartered by horses. Anybody want to die that way? Tie me to 4 horses and whoop. Some of them were sawn in two. Some of them were beheaded. And he says, these are the people who are heroic. And here's why. Because they looked beyond their personal experience and they believed in something that they hadn't even yet seen. That's what makes you heroic. So at the very end of this dialogue with God, here's what God says to Jeremiah. all his pain. He's going to say, I've got a bigger story. This is what the Lord says. As for all my wicked neighbors who seized the inheritance I gave to my people Israel, so all those Canaanite neighbors, I will. So here's the challenge. God uses future tense language. And guess what? It is not going to happen during Jeremiah's lifetime. There's going to be 70 years of exile. Babylon is going to be in charge for 70 years. But God says, I'm not done. Are you kidding me? I will uproot them from their lands, and I will uproot the people of Judah from among them, meaning I'm going to bring all the exiles home. But after I uproot them, I will again have compassion, and I will bring each of them back to their own inheritance and their own country. And he just goes on. The end dialogue with Jeremiah is this: it's not over. I know what you see in front of you. This is painful and this is ugly, but I have a plan. And it's like the people in Hebrews chapter 11. You've got to look forward. Listen, anybody want an interpretation on the book of Revelation? Anybody been confused by that? Here it is. Jesus wins. Okay? Jesus wins. Injustice, brokenness, the world is going to be created new. God will be here in our midst. Everything will be redeemed. And part of the reason that is at the end of the book is this: is in your life, in my life, we might be like Jeremiah, like, oh, this is so terrible. I'm so concerned about culture. I'm so concerned about worldly concerns. Yes, it's tragic. God would say, but look up. I'm going to win. I'm going to make everything right, and it might not be during your lifetime. But you cannot be paralyzed by the pain in your life. I want you to thrive. I want you to run with horses. I want you to take the next thing that comes at you and say, ouch, that hurts. Lord, give me a little compassion. Kiss my boo-boo, my heart is broken. And challenge me to move forward. Remember, this is chapter 12. It goes all the way to chapter 52. And God is constantly creating a prophet who is willing to run with horses. So in your life, where do you apply this? If you're single, you're looking towards the future, maybe you feel like God hasn't met your expectations. Listen, run with horses right now. Run with horses. Thrive. If you're married, I always think it's funny, like, married people wish they were single and single people wish they were married. But if you're married and you're like, man, all I see is this is not meeting my expectations and this is painful. Change your perspective. Bring your thoughts to God. Take these thoughts off. Give me something new. Let me find a way to celebrate whatever is good in the midst of this relationship with your kids. If it's cultural, you're saying, God, I refuse to have a world that's big. I'm going to change my expectations. I'm not pursuing comfort. I am pursuing obedience and alignment to you. And everything else is auxiliary. Will you pray with me? Father, we asked the question that Jeremiah asked so many thousands of years ago. Why? Why do bad things happen to good people? And sometimes we come to the same conclusion. I must have done something wrong, or maybe God is not actually good. We ask that you give us a new question. We ask that you would teach us how to change our expectations and how to embrace the challenges that come our way, because we know that's what produces growth and maturity in our life. So instead of pursuing a life of comfort, we pursue lives of transformation. And Lord, we want to echo our sister. We cannot control what happens to us, but drowning is optional. If God is for us, who can be against us? And so, Lord, I pray that we, at this point in our lives, whether we're 15 or 85, that, Lord, if we're tired now, would you teach us how to live in a different way, how to keep our heads up on you, how to experience pain, process pain, but to run with horses. In your name, amen. Amen. Hey, a couple thoughts. One, if you're a guest, we have a gift for you. Just want to say thanks for being here. If you need a Bible, those are available. They're free at the Welcome Center directly behind you. If you need prayer, there's people up front you can trust. They'd love to pray for you as you go. The hands and the feet and the mouthpiece of Jesus. God bless you. You're loved.